Agnes owes the fact that she isn't German to Hitler's defeat in the war. For the first time in history, the defeated were not allowed a scrap of glory, not even the painful glory of the shipwrecked. The victor was not satisfied with mere victory, but decided to judge the defeated and judge the entire nation, so that at that time it was not at all easy to speak German or to be German. Agnes's forebears on her mother's side were farmers living in the borderland between the German and French parts of Switzerland. Thus, even though from an administrative viewpoint they were French-Swiss, they spoke both languages equally well. Father's parents were Germans living in Hungary. As a young man, father studied in Paris, where he learned to speak passable French. After his marriage, however, German naturally became the couple's common language. It was only after the war that mother recalled the official language of her parents, and Agnes was sent to a French lycée. Father was permitted only a single Germanic pleasure, to recite to his elder daughter, in the original, Goethe's poetry. This is the most famous German poem ever written, one which all German children must learn by heart. On all hilltops there is peace. In all treetops you will hear hardly a breath. Birds in the woods are silent. Just wait, soon you too will rest. The idea of the poem is simple. In the woods everything is asleep, and you will sleep too. The purpose of the poetry is not to try to dazzle us with an astonishing thought, but to make one moment of existence unforgettable and worthy of unbearable nostalgia. In a literal translation, the poem loses everything. You will recognize how beautiful it is only when you read it in German. Über allen Gipfeln ist Ruhe. In allen Wipfeln spürst du. Kaum einen Hauch, die Vogelein schweigen in Wald. Wart nur bald, ruhest du auch. Every line has a different number of syllables. There is an alternation of trochees, iambs, dactyls. The sixth line is oddly longer than the others, and even though the poem consists of two couplets, the first grammatical sentence ends asymmetrically in the fifth line, which creates a melody that had never existed before in any poem as magnificent as it is ordinary. Agnes's father learned it while still in Hungary, where he attended German public schools, and the first time Agnes heard it from him, she was the same age he had been then. They recited it in the course of their strolls together, exaggerating all the accents and trying to march to the rhythm of the poem. In view of the irregularity of the meter, this was not at all simple, and they succeeded only when they got to the last two lines. Warte nur balde, ruhest du auch. They always shouted the last word so loudly that it could be heard for miles around. Out! The last time Father recited the little poem to her was 2 or 3 days before his death. At first, she thought that he was trying to return to his mother tongue in his childhood. Then she noticed that he was gazing into her eyes in an eloquent, intimate way, and it occurred to her that he wanted to remind her of their happy strolls of long ago. Then at last, she realized that the poem speaks of death. He wanted to tell her that he was dying and that he knew it. It had never occurred to her before that those innocent lines, so good for school children, might have this meaning. Father was lying in bed, his forehead damp with fever, and she grasped his hand, trying to master her tears. She whispered along with him, Wart nur balde ruhest du auch. Soon you too will rest. And she recognized the voice of Father's approaching death. It was the calm of silent birds in the treetops. After his death, calm did indeed begin to reign. That calm was in her soul, and it was beautiful. Let me repeat. It was the calm of silent birds in the treetops, and as time went on, Father's last message sounded more and more distinctly in that silence, like a hunter's horn, sounding from the depths of a forest. What did he wish to tell her with this gift? To be free, to live as she wished to live, to go where she wished to go. He himself had never dared to do so. That is why he had given his daughter all the means she needed to dare. From the moment she got married, Agnes lost all the pleasures of solitude. At work, she spent 8 hours a day in one room with 2 colleagues. Then she returned home to a 4-room apartment. Not a single one of the rooms was hers. There was a large living room, a bedroom for the parents, a room for Bridget, and Paul's small study. When she complained, Paul suggested that she consider the living room her own room, and he promised her, with undoubted sincerity, that neither he nor Bridget would disturb her there. But how could she feel at home in a room with a dining table and 8 chairs used only for dinner guests? It is probably clear by now why that morning she felt so happy in the bed that Paul had just left a moment before, and why she passed so quietly through the hall so as not to attract Bridget's attention. She even welcomed the capricious elevator because it permitted her a few moments of solitude. She looked forward to the drive, too, because in the car nobody talked to her and nobody looked at her. Yes, the most important thing was that nobody looked at her. Solitude. A sweet absence of looks. Once, both of her colleagues were off sick, and she worked for 2 weeks all alone in the office. She was surprised to notice that she was far less tired at the end of the day. Since then, she knew that looks were like weights that pressed her down to the ground, or like kisses that sucked her strength. That looks were needles that etched the wrinkles in her face. In the morning, as she was waking up, she heard a news broadcast about a young woman who, in the course of a completely minor operation, died because of a carelessly administered anesthetic. 3 doctors had been brought to trial, and a consumer protection organization had proposed that in future all operations should be filmed and the films permanently filed. Everyone applauded this proposal. Every day we are stabbed by thousands of looks, but this is not enough. In the end, one single stare will be instituted that will not leave us for a moment, will follow us in the street, in the woods, at the doctor's, on the operating table, in bed. Pictures of our life, down to the last detail, will be filed away to be used at any time in court proceedings or in the interest of public curiosity. These thoughts reawakened in her a longing for Switzerland. Actually, she had been going there 2 or 3 times a year ever since Father's death. Paul and Bridget spoke with indulgent smiles of her hygienic, sentimental needs. She goes there to sweep leaves off Father's grave and to breathe fresh air by the wide open window of a Swiss hotel. But they were wrong. Even though she had no lover there, Switzerland was the one deep and systematic act of betrayal she committed against them. Switzerland, the song of birds in the treetops. She dreamed about staying there someday and never coming back. Several times she went so far as to look at Swiss apartments for sale or for rent, and even drafted a letter in her mind in which she announced to her daughter and her husband that although she still loved them, she had decided to live alone, without them. She begged them, however, to let her hear from them from time to time because she wanted to be sure that nothing bad had happened to them. This was the most difficult thing to express and to explain, that she needed to know how they were, even though at the same time she had no desire whatever to see them or to be with them. Of course, these were only dreams. How could a sensible woman leave a happy marriage? All the same, a seductive voice from afar kept breaking into her conjugal peace. It was the voice of solitude. She closed her eyes and listened to the sound of a hunting horn coming from the depths of a distant forest. There were paths in those forests. Her father stood on one of them, smiling and inviting her to join him.